were cut, citing concerns over lice and mold. Her parents refused and filed a lawsuit claiming her rights were being violated. In 2020, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the school. However, on Monday, the Court of Appeal partially overturned this decision, recognizing the case as one of self-expression rather than religious right. Now, attorney Isaac Buchanan is representing the Virgos. He called the ruling a victory for human rights and freedom of expression in Jamaica. Meanwhile, Shadow Minister of Culture and Creative Industries, Dr. Deborah Hickling-Gordon, is also applauding the court's ruling. Dr. Hickling-Gordon, however, has criticized the government for opposing the Rastafarian child's claim, calling their actions hypocritical and manipulative. We'll hear more from her and another expert on the matter in our discussion segment. Though the Jamaica Public Service had earlier this month urged Jamaicans not to accept services from fraudsters claiming to be JPS workers, recent incidents have caused the utility provider to issue another warning. Here's Trisha Gay Kelly with more.
The Jamaica Public Service JPS is again warning citizens against what it describes as a dangerous practice following Hurricane Beryl. The company had issued a release advising citizens to be cautious of individuals offering to reconnect them to the grid for a fee. But as JPS Media and Public Relations Manager Audrey Williams explains, it seems the situation has escalated.
There are persons who are going around claiming to be JPS workers, claiming to be JPS contractors, and asking for money to connect persons.
And despite some communities being in darkness for weeks, she's urging members of the public not to give in to the offers. Williams assures employees of the company will under no circumstance request money to do their job.
JPS employees will not ask you for money to connect you. They will not ask you for money to carry out any kind of restoration activity. When you see such persons, 1, do not pay them, and 2, report them to the police and to JPS. You may use the customer care center number 888 call JPS, or you may DM us on social media and let us know.
But along with this, she reminds citizens to pay keen attention to the visitors and look for signs of authority.
Do not pay anyone. JPS workers will have their photo ID and will tell you that they are here to do X or Y, and they will not ask you for funds. JPS is once again appealing to members of the public not to pay impersonators of JPS team members.
Trisha Gay Kelly, CVM News.
And to the latest on that front, a man has been arrested by police in Westmoreland after allegedly impersonating JPS workers. It has been reported that the individual solicited payment from residents with promises of restoring service after Hurricane Beryl. The Jamaica Public Service Company is again responding, urging Jamaicans to be aware of illegal activities as this could possibly delay restoration efforts. As Hurricane Beryl unleashed its devastating power across St. Elizabeth, one mother and her 5 children found themselves in a life-threatening situation. With their home being torn apart around them, they had to rely on their strength to survive. Here's more from Raheem White.
Hurricane's wind reaching terrifying speed, Cassandra Foster and her children took turns clinging to the bathroom door, the sturdiest part of their home. For over 5 hours, they held on, supporting each other and praying for the storm to pass.
I didn't sleep because when I had tired, my other sister take on. I had to hold the door with the breeze as I couldn't go through. You can just look right down there. Where I had to, is the next morning I put on a padlock on that grill. Oh. Because it wasn't grill at the time.
Now, in the aftermath of the storm, this courageous family is turning their focus to rebuilding their lives. The damage to their home is extensive. Amidst the destruction, the eldest son's school equipment was completely ruined, adding another layer of challenge to their recovery efforts.
My son here, he had done up on lower 6 at Black River High School, and all his papers got damaged. His books, everything. His laptop, everything is gone.
Despite the intense fear and physical strain, Foster's family survived the storm with no injuries. However, like many in St. Elizabeth, they now face the daunting task of starting over. Raheem White, CVM News.
In other news now, the Students' Loan Bureau, SLB, is implementing a no-guarantor policy for people seeking their services. This change has, of course, been welcomed by many. Speaking about this update on Sunrise this morning was manager of the SLB's Loan Servicing Department, Beryl.
One of the hindrances is that some persons are not able to find guarantors, suitable guarantors, to stand security for the loan. And we find that from time to time, we wouldn't want this to be an hindrance for a person to pursue higher education. And so we welcome and we decided to change the guarantor policy and allow for applicants to apply for loans without the need for a guarantor.
So is this applicable to all loan categories at the SLB right now?
It is. So we have what we call the targeted loan, which is the bulk of our portfolio, and that loan carries the moratorium period. So while persons are in school, they are not required to make payments until after completion. Then we have the postgraduate, which is for those persons who are pursuing postgraduate studies. And we also have the pay as you study. This is a loan product targeted towards persons pursuing undergraduate studies.
Now, following the attempted assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump, discussion has brewed over whether the Jamaican political landscape could eventually give rise to a similar event. Speaking on CVM's lead story Monday, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says there's no need for alarm.
Times are a-changing, and I, for one, as a journalist, have often wondered, why is it so easy to get access to these holders of high political office?
The Americans have a system of the Secret Service is responsible for protection of high officials.
Yes.
And that has been discussed. Maybe that's the route we should go in Jamaica, because it does become a little bit, it placed the Minister of National Security in a peculiar position where I said officers have to be assigned to officials for protective work when the threat risk is certainly not that high in Jamaica.
Operation Refresh, the name given to the primary healthcare reform series launched in St. Anne recently, that aims at standardizing the health center's infrastructure and increasing the number of home visits from the country's more than 2,000 community health aides. Now, Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton, during his sectoral debate in May, mentioned the move to conduct the series of sensitization sessions to highlight the sector's renewed focus.
So there is a process that is involved in this program. One is to remind you of the importance of your role and to recognize you for that. And I want to make that very clear. Two is to tweak, not radically adjust, but tweak your role so that you will see the greater responsibility of spending more time in the community than in the health center.
We take a break. More after these.
Tired of the high interest rates and the whole heap of loan payments every month? Take a debt consolidation loan from AIM to pay credit card bills and all other high interest rate loans from other institutions. Make one low monthly payment to AIM and take home some extra money in your pocket. That's financial freedom. One loan, one low payment, more money in your pocket. Call AIM today to lower your loan payment. And remember, you won't find a better deal elsewhere. Guaranteed.
Recycling partners of Jamaica. Yeah, we got to make a change, and we have to do it now, can't wait for later. We put plastic in its place, and we all can agree that will be safer than in the gullies and in the drains. Recycling partners of Jamaica. We put plastic in its place, yeah, the place of it clean. PET, the top of the ethylene. HDPE, buckle up against screen. Baby to granny, everybody roping. Yeah, we got to go green, you know what I mean. See the sign from the bin, if we drop it in through car window, you fling that another thing. And we don't want no garbage in this game. No, we are the little bug, them are not the same. So listen up, Jamaica, I'm saying it's time to make a change. Recycling partners of Jamaica. We put plastic in its place, and we all can agree that will be safer than in the gullies in the every rains. Recycling partners of Jamaica. We put plastic in its place.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Fitness, brought to you by You'll Play and Nate.
Welcome back. It's now time for our discussion segment. In our continuing coverage of the landmark Court of Appeal ruling affirming a student's right to wear dreadlocks at school, we turn our focus to the broader implications for the Rastafarian community, cultural expression and educational policy in Jamaica. Joining us this afternoon to provide insight is Dr. Deborah Hickling-Gordon, Shadow Minister of Culture and Creative Industries, along with Executive Director at the Jamaicans for Justice, Michael Jackson. Now, these ladies will be discussing the significance of this ruling and the steps needed to ensure the protection of minority groups. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. Well, Dr. Hickling-Gordon, I'll start with you and then Ms. Jackson, but I'd like to first gauge your initial reactions to the ruling.
I was delighted when I saw it. In fact, I was really pleased to see that on appeal, this decision could have been reached, given that before that the court did not see it fit to find that there was some form of discrimination. So I think it's important, although there have been distinctions that have been made with regards to the issues that led to this new decision, that it was important enough to send a message nationally about the importance of these issues.
Right. Ms. Jackson, your initial response to the ruling that was made by the appeals court?
Well, it's a big win for the Virgo family, and it's a big win for our constitutional rights. It's a big win for our children and how we express ourselves in the different sectors of society. I think when we look at what it means to have Black identity in a country that is largely homogeneous, in other words, most of us are Black people, then the question we have to be asking ourselves, why are we in this stage still fighting to celebrate what our identity means as Black people? And this ruling is a landmark one for how we understand freedom of expression and what exactly that constitutional right really means for all of us.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, I see both of you are in agreement there, and you both believe that this ruling is for the Rastafarian community and for cultural expression in Jamaica. So, Doc, you have criticized certainly the government about how certain aspects of the ruling was being handled, especially when it comes to the Rastafarian community and cultural expression. What do you make of that now?
Well, my issue is this. Heavy weather has been made about a relationship that is being brokered with the Rastafarian community between this government and the community. And there have been a number of overtures that it seems have been made, which are important. But I think it is even more important for us to get to the substantive issues that the Rastafarians have put on the table over a period of time. And the government's arguments against discrimination in this case, first in the initial case and then at appeal, seems to me to be hypocritical. It's about saying we are with the Rastafarian community, but then acting in the absolute opposite way in terms of this fundamental issues of rights and freedoms in our legal system. So what is real? What is truthful? What is honest in terms of the relationships that are being brokered with the Rastafarian community? I think we need to think it through.
Ms. Jackson, do you share similar views on the matter? Do you believe that the government stance has somehow affected this case?
You know, let me answer that and also link to a little area of clarification for the listeners. Let me say this. The fact that you have a family being forced to expend dollars to attorneys to be fighting for constitutional rights when a government can simply go to cabinet and say, when I look at this concept of black identity and how we express ourselves, these school grooming policies and so on could easily have been amended to ensure that they're more prescriptive rather than leave it to school administrations to do and make rules that are arbitrary and unjust. Let me start there. But I also want to clarify, while I agree with Dr. Hickling, the ruling is very clear because the family also indicated that they're not of Rastafarian faith. But while the ruling is more instructive, even with that, I believe, the ruling clearly stipulates that, guess what? The family wore dreadlocks to identify who they are, their very existence, their identity, and therefore it has broader implications for children who simply want to wear their afros as black people. The other concept of the ruling, or the other component, I found very instructive. When it speaks to your right to a fair and equitable treatment by a public authority, yet you have rules being made that, guess what? Children who wear dreadlock, somehow fungi and lice and so on, would place the other children at risk. Can you imagine such an offensive rule? And the courts were very clear that in situations such as these, you have the education regulation that you can say to the parent, take this child out of school and deal with any such situation. So therefore, such an arbitrary rule, it has no justification to exist. And I'm quite happy that when you read paragraph 177 of that judgment, the Court of Appeal would have rubbished such an offensive argument to begin with. And those are the things I want to have resonance with our viewers, so they appreciate that not because you wear lock, somehow your hairstyle would mean that you are not hygienic. We need to get rid of what you can call a colonial mindset and get to a stage in our society where we really celebrate black identity. So very instructive in those two regards.
Boy, Ms. Jackson, you really consumed my other question, which is really now going to have to go to...
The Court of Appeal has ruled in favor of a girl who was told by the authorities at Kensington Primary that she would have to cut her dreadlocks in order to accept a place at the St. Catherine-based institution. On what grounds did the case turn? Just what did the Court of Appeal hear that caused them to overturn partially the original ruling of the Supreme Court? That's the issue for discussion today on Lead Story. Good evening and welcome to Lead Story here on CVM TV. My name is George Davis. It's a story that had the nation talking then and has the nation talking now. The issue of ZV, known only by her initials, of course, because she's a minor, the subject of a court battle between, well, effectively herself and her parents and the authorities at Kensington Primary School, the Attorney General of Jamaica and the government of Jamaica concerning the way she wears her hair. She was originally told by the authorities at Kensington that she would have to get rid of her locks in order to take up a place at the institution after originally being accepted as a student. Her parents said, no, not so. She will not cut these locks because they represent more than a hairstyle, and the school insisted that this unwritten rule had to be followed. The parents went to court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the school, saying that it effectively had breached no rights of ZV, but then the matter was taken to the Court of Appeal, where the justices partially overturned that ruling of the Supreme Court. We're going to hear in this nugget we prepared at the top of the program just what the Court of Appeal has ruled, and then we'll speak to some parties interested in the matter to get a broader perspective of the ramifications of the ruling and just what the Court of Appeal saw that gave them a cause to partially overturn that Supreme Court ruling.
In any conversation about Jamaica's culture globally, it's almost impossible to exclude the contribution of Rastafari. While the community has long been a postcard of the Jamaican culture, it has a storied history of discrimination locally. Just 1 year after Jamaica's independence, the most notorious of the persecution of the community, the Coral Gardens Massacre, occurred, starting on Good Friday with a beating and forceful shaving of the men's hair. Now, while there's increased acceptance of Rastafari with accomplished Rastas or those sporting locked hairstyles occupying space in government, academia, media, law, and medicine, legislation and policies have not caught up to the social progress. Still, those sporting locked hairstyles are unable to join the military, the police force, and laws governing education, representing glaring gaps in equality. The Court of Appeal on July 15 struck down the practice of barring students from public schools because they sport dreadlocks. The case involved parents Dale and Shireen Virgo, who appeared before the Supreme Court, asking the court to adjudicate a matter in which their daughter was told to remove her locks as a condition to being enrolled at the Kensington Primary School. It's important to note in this case, the defendant was not a practicing member of Rastafari, yet the court affirmed the actions were a violation of her constitutional right to freedom of expression and the right to equitable treatment. Speaking with CVM News, Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Michael Jackson, who originally represented the family, welcomed the ruling from the appeals court.
It's a big win for our constitutional rights. It's a big win for our children and how we express ourselves in the different sectors of society. I think when we look at what it means to have Black identity in a country that is largely homogeneous, in other words, most of us are Black people, then the question we have to be asking ourselves, why are we in this stage still fighting to celebrate what our identity means as Black people? And this ruling is a landmark one for how we understand freedom of expression and what exactly that constitutional right really means for all of us.
Will other institutions be locked into the ruling from the Court of Appeal and adjust their rules accordingly regarding locks and other Afro-inspired hairstyles? We wait to see how this groundbreaking ruling plays out in local institutions.
Thank you, Jonathan Atkins, and thank you, Curlin Brown, for that piece at the top. Now I'm turning to John Clark. He's one of the attorneys who's worked on this matter, representing, of course, the Virgo family, for some perspective on the reason for the Court of Appeal's decision. Counsel, good evening. Welcome to Lead Story.
Thank you for having me.
Good. All right. So the first thing I wanted to address is whether or not this issue has anything at all to do with Rastafari. The reason I ask that is because a lot of talk around this latest decision, this decision of the Court of Appeal, centers around that on social media. So I just want to clarify if at all this issue has anything to do with the facts of Rastafari.
Before we go there, I just wanted to clarify that when I first worked on this case, which was at the very inception of the case, that was whilst I was at Jamaicans for Justice with Mr. Isa Buchanan, who continued this case through all the stages in court. And the persons who actually argued the case in the Court of Appeal is King's Counsel and Michael Hilton, his junior Miss D. Allen, and Mr. Isa Buchanan. But this case, to answer your question, has a lot to do with Rastafarian, even though the particular claimant and the appellant ultimately are not themselves practicing Rastafarians, but Rastafarians wear long hair, and the policy in relation to wearing long hair, which the Court of Appeal's judgment touched on, would affect persons who, by their religion, wear long hair to school.
Yeah.
And I, as a student myself at Monroe, would recall at some time when our own school had a rule in relation to persons wearing long hair to Monroe, and persons who practice Rastafarians would themselves be touched by that rule. So this judgment will have to be examined by various school authorities ultimately to see whether or not current policies, current school rule may unwittingly be breaching persons' constitutional rights. And that was one of the reasons why we applaud Virgos for taking on this case, because many persons would complain about this issue, but the Virgos, through Dale and Shireen, ensured that what was a serious issue was brought before the court to be ventilated and decided. And this lead to this landmark judgment. But the Virgos are modern day freedom fighters, and they must be applauded.
Yes, indeed. There's so much to it. It's a fascinating case, Counsel, so much to cover. Let's see if we can do justice to it in the time we have together. So here's the thing. The school has no beads, no locks, no braids policy. So on the surface, someone would say, well, why is it that the school with that rule in place, whether written or in practice, why would the fact of that law be trumped by the desire of their parents to send a child with locks to the school in clear breach of what the school has set down as its rule for how children should wear their hairstyles to the school? I want you to address that for me at the top.
Well, one of the first things is that the school is also a school in Jamaica.
Yes.
And all schools must ensure that the rules are consistent with our supreme law, the Constitution. So the school themselves were insisting that the Virgos don't breach the school rule, have a rule that was breaching the Constitution. And what the Virgos were arguing is that your rule is breaching the supreme law in the land. You're subjecting our child, you're violating our right to freedom of expression, and you're violating some of our fundamental constitutional rights. No school has a right to pass rules that violate the supreme law in the land. And the supreme law in the land was developed by our leaders, ultimately, to codify some of our more important fundamental rights, which our foreparents fought for over centuries to ensure that we can enjoy as citizens of a free and democratic society. So to answer the question about no beads, etc., the schools can have rules, and rules are important, but these rules must be done in a manner consistent with the Constitution. And what the Constitution says that when you have certain things that may derogate from constitutional rights, they must do so in the most least restrictive method. And as this displayed in the judgment, this rule against locks wasn't the most least restrictive method, because one of the justifications for the rule was hygiene.
Yes.
But then the school indicated that you have regulations in the education regulation which could deal with the hygiene problem. So to have a broad ban against locks just because of a hygiene concern was not the least restrictive method to deal with this issue.
Yeah, all right, good. I want you also to address this part, because the school has a right, as you've acknowledged, to set rules in place to ensure the orderly function of the school. And someone will say, well, freedom of expression can change. How you want to express yourself this week can change depending on how you want, relative to how you want to express yourself the next week or the week after or the next month. So freedom of expression is something that can be described as being in flux. It depends on how you feel, how you want to express yourself. And then someone will say, counsel, so how can a school put rules in place to at all times accommodate an individual's need to freely express themselves? I want to ask you what the court, if anything, said about this issue of the freedom of expression of the individual, the child in this question, and the right of the school to put rules in place to ensure the orderly functioning of the school.
Well, there'll always be a tension between the school's need to ensure the orderly function of rule and individuals' quote-unquote freedom of expression. But importantly, what exactly is at play in this particular case is not just the freedom of expression, but the fact that the school said that the reason they had this particular rule was to deal with hygiene issues. So what the court did in this case was to examine that reason and then to ask itself the question, which is the second element of Oaks, whether or not that reason itself was reasonably justified. So it's not that to say that the schools can't have rule, for example, that nobody should be wearing pink hair. But what it must be is whenever you put forward a justification for that rule, that justification must be reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society. So the school can't say, I have that rule because of hygiene, when there are other better, less restrictive methods to deal with that rule. But ultimately, if the school have a rule, for example, about pink hair, there may be just a complete ban may be necessary if, for example, the school's uniform and the orderly function of the school may very well require such a rule. So, for example, if the school say that you must wear black shoes, I can't wake up tomorrow and decide I'm wearing sandals to school. Yes. Because ultimately there may be a very good reason behind the rule. So one of the key things about this judgment is not just that court recognized freedom of expression, but the court did it within the vacuum of the justification provided by the school. Yes. And the justification provided was that we were concerned about license junjo, which this ultimately the Court of Appeal did not buy.
Yes, hear you on that. All right. Like where we're going and like how we're developing. After the break, Counsel, I want to pick you up on a couple of other aspects of the case and, of course, lean back on what the Supreme Court said in its original judgment, which, of course, the Court of Appeal partially overturned. And I want to ask you as well, why is it that it's necessary to say the Court of Appeal partially overturned the Supreme Court ruling when it looks as straightforward as it does appear to us, untrained on paper? More on Lead's story on this issue after this.
It's attorney Sekou Clark. Catch me on the next episode of Cooking with Love on CVM TV.
Cook with Love, so we do it.
We have gotten 7-figure recoveries for immigrants who are undocumented.
7 figures.
7 figures. So many people have asked me, the bond hearing is separate from the removal proceedings, but to be released.
Wow. Man, a big chef in there, so I go on there right now.
Big up Cooking with Love.
So in true corner office style, we are out and we're on the road today. We are literally on the road, in the streets.
I'm Shani Burton. I'm doing smoothies.
But where do you find time to run the smoothie business, the online business, the clothes business? Where do you find the time and what drives you?
I like dirty work. If I wasn't a shoemaker, I would be a mechanic. It seemed like I was the only female shoemaker in Jamaica.
I've been trimming with him for more than 2 years. Look up on the man. I am satisfied every time I trim. So you're risking your life now in this corner office to save the lives of our children. Yes. And that for me is a bigger deal.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
talking about a very, very significant ruling concerning the wearing of dreadlocks in schools. The Kensington Primary School authorities there told a child in 2018 that she would not be able to accept a place unless she cut her dreadlocks hairstyle. The parents said absolutely not, and they went to court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the school, but the matter was taken to the Court of Appeal, which has ruled in favor of the child and her, well, not the child and her family, in favor of the child. I have the attorney at law, John Clark, who worked on this matter in the very early stages with me. I'm being joined, we're being joined by Kevin Jones, principal of Mona High, and not too long from now, we hope to speak with at least one member of the Virgo family. Counsel, I come back to you quickly. The Supreme Court, just to summarize what the Supreme Court said in its ruling, it held that a school policy prohibiting dreadlocks as a hairstyle does not violate constitutional rights, including to self-expression of the child, and that an individual cannot vary the rules of an institution simply because it did not or it does not fit in with their choices and mode of self-expression, and held that the school's policy was not an infringement of the child's right to freedom of expression. That's what, in essence, the Supreme Court ruled when it handled the matter, ruling in favor of the authorities. Can you say, from your studying of the judgment in this Court of Appeal matter, what the Court of Appeal heard or cited to cause them to overturn this reasoning from the Supreme Court?
The Court of Appeal, this is a very difficult case. And why it's a very difficult case is because the full court, in fact, relied on authority essentially to come to that position. But what the Court of Appeal did in this particular case, at paragraph 80, where they answered the specific question you're asking now, is that they indicated that on the facts of this particular case, the full court's decision was flawed because there was evidence before the court, which the court should have considered, in relation to the fact that that would have ensured that this case was one in which the rationale for wearing the locks was supported by affidavit evidence. And the Court of Appeal was at pains to explore that affidavit evidence from Mr. Dale Virgo and from mother as well, Shireen Virgo, and to indicate that on the facts of this particular case, there was sufficient evidentiary material for the court to make a finding ultimately that there was the constitutional right was engaged, and therefore to move on to the second step, look at the justification. And the justification for breaching constitutional rights are very important, because if the justifications are important, we must accept in our constitutional framework that justification may permit the right to be breached, because most of our rights are not absolute rights.
Yes.
But they're rights within a context.
Yes.
And in this particular case, what is important about the case is the justification. And the justification was a hygienic justification.
Absolutely.
And the justification was what was weighed heavily by the Court of Appeal. And on the evidence of this case, they said that there was no evidence that the particular child, Miss ZB, in fact, had any hygienic problem. And as such, even if she had, there were other means, less restrictive means, by which the school could have dealt with that concern. So the fact of this particular case is important because what it demonstrates is that broad policy,
yes,
without proper justification,
yes,
does not stand up in 2024 Jamaica.
Absolutely right. So in a sense, the Court of Appeal is saying that your reason for telling the child to cut the locks to come to the school because of the fear of junjo and lice, not good enough, essentially. I'm turning to the principal of Mona High, Principal Kevin Jones. Principal, good afternoon. Good evening, rather.
Hi there, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. This ruling, the fact of the Court of Appeal ruling, what does it mean for yourself as effectively the CEO of Mona High School, the man who enforces the rules, and colleagues and your colleagues in the principal profession, let's call it that, this ruling by the Court of Appeal where the wearing of dreadlocks by students is concerned?
Well, we didn't have that problem at Mona High School, first of all, because I don't deny access to students based on the fact that, they have expressed themselves due to the fact that they are part of the Rastafarian religion. When I read the case, I didn't read it in its entirety, but I looked at the article in the Gleaner, and we were also having some discussions with fellow principals this morning. I agree that you can't deny a child access to education because of, the dreadlocks here and so forth. I thought we had passed that a long time ago. Interestingly, though, the court made the point that this is not about religious rights and freedom. It's about self-expression. That is the part that caught my attention. That's the part that that our discussion was centered on this morning. What do we mean by self-expression?
Yes.
You know, are there boundaries? Are there parameters?
Yes.
Are there limits? You know, what are we going to, how are we going to treat with this matter? I would have wanted some more information where this is concerned. But as I said before, point blank, we have Rastafarian students at Mona High School. Even when I used to attend Clarendon College as a student, we had a lot of Rastafarian students. So this issue of barring a child from school because he's a Rastafarian, I don't agree with that. So if that's the basis upon which the court ruled that the school or the school board violated the constitutional right of the child, then I totally agree.
Yes.
But as I said before, this issue about self-expression, that is the one that has caught my attention.
Sadly, the court wasn't asked to examine that in detail, so it didn't give you the detail that you wanted. But the problem that I see you and your colleagues having now, Principal Jones, is the issue of setting rules and setting down policy, because freedom of expression is perhaps the most fluid of things, because as I've said to counsel earlier, you can choose to express yourself one way this month, this week, and change it up as you go along. How does a school then, quote unquote, legislate for an individual's right to freedom of expression within the context of their freedom to change?
Right, and then you're dealing with, like in my school, we're dealing with 1,600 students, and everybody comes with their individual taste and preferences and so forth. Now, what it means, though, is that school boards and principals will have to go back, and review their policies and to make adjustments, because we can't be seen as governmental institutions violating the constitutional rights of kids. And I looked up the definition of self-expression, just to guide me, and it says that it's the expression of one's feelings or thoughts or ideas. And, these can be expressed in writing and dress and grooming and so forth. So where every single school now has a policy on dress and grooming. So when a child now comes to school and express himself in any manner in which he feels, the question is now, what do we do as principals? Well, now, to be honest with you, sorry there, Sir Clark.
Continue.
Carry on, Principal.
Right. No, I was saying that I think, to be fair to the Court of Appeal, at paragraph 154, it gives some guidance in relation to how a situation like that could be handled, because the Court of Appeal did look at the fact as to whether or not the rule in terms of the dreadlocks could have suffered because of what was the justification. So linking it and answering the question about equitable treatment, it said, what would the wearing of dreadlocks cause, for example, disruptive behavior or breakout of lice, or pose such a risk over and above the risk from hairstyles worn by other children at the school. So in other words, I appreciate from paragraph 154 that if a policy exists for a very good reason, and that reason can be properly justified, then that policy would be equitable, and in such circumstance would be justified.
The only problem... The only problem, though, Councillor, what Principal Jones is saying is that you're going to have a lot of those policies to marry with the different ways that students want to express themselves, and that's the problem right there. I'd like to introduce Dale Virgo to the conversation. He could have taken the easier road and say, you know what, you don't want my child, I'll find somewhere else where her hairstyle is not an issue. He stood on more than principle. He went to war effectively for the right of his child to express herself in the way that he as a parent felt she ought to at that stage, and he has been successful. Mr. Virgo, good evening.
Good evening, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling relieved, It has been, a couple of years now we've been dealing with this, and I'm finally relieved, that we'll have a favorable judgment.
The Supreme Court, in its ruling, in my view, spoke equivocally. Yeah, there was nothing unequivocal about what the Supreme Court said. But you weren't satisfied. You felt that there was justice somewhere else. You went to the Court of Appeal. Did you have any doubts after the Supreme Court ruling that you would find success here at the Court of Appeal?
I mean, given justice in Jamaica is sometimes not really given fairly. I had a little bit of doubt, but I had faith at the same time. Because we're doing the right thing and we're fighting for something. And when you fight for something, it's not easy, And it's not really a case of trying to open the floodgates of freedom of expression, This is really tackling an issue with, a community of people who identify as Rastafarians, who have constantly been discriminated against in schools, and children of a lot of Rastafarians are told that, hey, you have to go to another school or cut your locks. And that practice to me is something that you'd expect, pre-independence or pre-80s. But no, in the 2010s, 2020s, where, Jamaicans on the world stage have a cultural identity in the way that we look, It comes from Jamaica. We spearheaded that. We used Bob Marley as our icon to promote Jamaica. Jamaica tourist board,
Yeah.
You have one love, all of that stuff. You talk about peace and love, and everybody thinks that every Jamaican have locks.
Yeah.
So we use that to represent us. But in school, we don't want to teach that. We rather teach, colonial ideas.
Yeah.
Which needs to be updated.
Dale, we're absolutely out of time, but I have to ask you this last one. Had the school given you a better justification?
Jamaica, it's an absolute blessing. We're really excited to share this.
Tune in to CVM See It Happen.
Start saving for your golden years with a Sagicor Lifestyle Approved Retirement Scheme. The time by Sagicor Life is
7 o'clock.
CVM News at 7 headlines Tuesday, courtesy of Heart NSTA Trust, Jamaica's Human Development Agency.
Coming up in the news at 7, major crimes trending down, murders declined by 14.5%. Manchester man killed and teenager injured in weekend bloodletting. Losses to agriculture climbed to almost $5 billion.
And also in the news, South Trelawney residents demand representation amid disaster relief concerns. In the business report, business and consumer confidence down. And in sports, former Trinidad and Tobago and Manchester United striker Dwight York is being considered as a possible head coach for the Reggae Boys. From Kingston, Jamaica, this is CVM News at 7. I'm Stephen McHugh.
And I'm Curlin Brown. It's Tuesday, July 16, 2024. Thanks so much for joining us. As the assessment post-Hurricane Beryl intensifies, Agriculture Minister Floyd Green told Parliament the sector suffered close to $5 billion in losses.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister announced a multi-million-dollar cleanup plan as Parliament wrapped its 2024-25 sectoral debate today. Ramon Gordon reports.
The 2024-2025 sectoral debate concluded in Parliament on Tuesday, July 16, which coincidentally falls on the birthday of House Speaker Juliet Holness. House Leader Edmund Bartlett recapped most of the 18 presentations over the weeks, offering even a worthy update on crime.
Dr. Chang reported that at the start of the year, there were 244 active gangs in the country. Through our concerned efforts and strategic interventions, I'm proud to announce that this number has been dramatically reduced to 106 active gangs, a remarkable decline of 56%.
However, all is not well, at least in southern parishes where families are still grappling with the fallout from Hurricane Beryl.
Madam Speaker, as I traverse some of the hardest hit areas of Hurricane Beryl, the devastation and dislocation is like nothing I have seen or experienced before.
The Agriculture Minister gave insight into the billion-dollar losses the agriculture sector is now enduring. Over 23,000 hectares of farmlands have sustained severe damage, affecting well over 48,000 farmers.
Madam Speaker, the assessment up to today's date puts the financial loss to our agricultural sector at $4.73 billion. We have lost 323,412 animals. Domestic crops saw us losing approximately 18,700 hectares of our vegetable lines, with damages estimated at about $1.95 billion, affecting 40,000 farmers.
These are just a glimpse into the losses accrued by the island's primary food providers, some of whom have warned to brace for price increases. Infrastructure has also taken a hit. The Prime Minister says the National Works Agency, NWA, will soon mobilize to clear waterlogged in flooded areas to prevent similar events in the future.
$800 million has been allocated to the NWA as part of this national cleanup program, which I had announced last week. This $800 million is a small part of the overall preliminary estimate from the NWA for road infrastructure repair and rehabilitation of $10.25 billion.
The billion-dollar recovery efforts are continuing across the country, with priority being given to the hardest-hit regions.
With the Emancipation and Independence holidays approaching, it is also a perfect opportunity for Jamaicans to become involved in this initiative by participating in the cleanup and beautification efforts. There will be no specific constituency allocation, as not all constituencies were equally affected.
Ramon Gordon for CVM News.
To matters of national security now, the police commissioner is reporting another quarter of reduction in major crimes. Added to the crime drop is the continued seizure of illegal weapons and the closure of major cases. Here's more from Courtney Lewis.
Crimes have reduced. That's according to Commissioner of Police Dr. Kevin Blake, who at the Constabulary's quarterly media briefing on Tuesday announced the JCF's latest statistics.
Every major crime is down. Overall, there has been an almost 12% decrease in major crimes since the start of 2024. Notably, murders have decreased by 14.5% as of July 15, 2024. Shootings are down almost 2%. Robberies are down 15% for the same corresponding period. Rapes are down 32%. Break-ins, 6% decrease.
However, that's only the beginning. The JCF also reported success in the seizure of over 400 illegal firearms, the weapon of choice for criminals in Jamaica.
As of June 30, 2024, we recorded a 14% increase in gun seizures over the same period last year, taking in 422 illegal firearms off the streets and our communities, and these are mainly pistols.
It's partly why Dr. Blake gave an apt warning to criminals, adding the constabulary force is continuing to increase visibility in what he describes as hotspot communities.
We will disrupt your criminal activities and isolate you. We will come for you. When we do, we encourage you to lay down arms and surrender willingly. If you meet us with aggression, we will respond with superior force, and we will win, because we are smarter, we are better trained, and better resourced. We will be relentless in pursuing, capturing, building airtight cases for your conviction and of those who support and sympathize with you.
Courtney Lewis for CVM News.
Meanwhile, head of the Crime and Security Portfolio, DCP Fitz Bailey, says investigations are ongoing into the death of 29-year-old entertainer Stephanie Williams, popularly known as Medic. The update comes after autopsy and DNA results confirmed skeletal remains found in February were those of the entertainer.
In terms of the case involving Medics, it's an active investigation. We have identified persons of interest, and the matter is progressing well, and we are convinced, based on where we are at, that we will bring this matter to a positive conclusion.
And investigations are also ongoing into a grisly attack in Mandeville, Manchester on the weekend, when a man was shot and killed and a teenage girl injured. Britannia Witter has more details.
A series of unrelated shooting incidents plagued the once quiet parish of Manchester over the weekend, claiming the lives of several people. The latest victim is 28-year-old Rasheen Young. His life was cut short when gunmen opened fire on the Toyota Mark X car he and several occupants were traveling in on Sunday. Reports are that at about 9:50 p.m., Young, who was driving the vehicle when it came under gunfire, stopped on West Road in the vicinity of Noel Circle. 2 passengers allegedly fled the car and ran into bushes to avoid the attack. Young and a 17-year-old female were taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead while the teenager was admitted for treatment. The investigation is ongoing. Britannia Witter, CVM News.
The St. Andrew Police are urging members of the public to share what they know as the hunt continues for the suspects in Monday's killing of a man in the Waltham Park area. The police say at least 1 suspect was shot and injured following the incident. Here again is Britannia Witter with more.
At about 1:30 p.m. on Monday, tragedy struck as the sound of gunshots rang out on 31 Waltham Park Road in Kingston.
But since we come out here, come buy something here, says a man them rob at the wholesalers and kill him.
When things calmed, it was discovered that 30-year-old Rasheen Broomfield of Coburn Pen had succumbed to bullet wounds. Reports are that Broomfield was in a wholesale when he was approached by gunmen who opened fire at him. As they attempted to make their escape, they were confronted by members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Superintendent of Police in charge of the St. Andrews Central Division, Marlon Nesbitt, says it appears that one of the men was injured during the confrontation.
There was an intervention and one of them, we believe, was shot and we are seeking him presently. So we are appealing to anybody in the adjoining communities who know of this perpetrator to assist us to locate him.
He adds that the shooting seems to stem from an ongoing issue in the Coburn area.
From indication, this incident seemed to have stemmed from some conflicts existing within the Coburn area between different factions, and it culminated in that gentleman, Mr. Bloomfield, being shot and killed.
He says the police are close to making a breakthrough in the matter, but as investigations continue, he is urging anyone with information that can assist the police to come forward. Britannia Witter, CVM News.
Business operators in Albertown, Trelawney say they've been facing severe challenges for weeks now. They explain they've been forced to rely on generators to power their operations, resulting in significant financial strain. They also complain they are left to paddle through post-disaster matters without the help of a Member of Parliament. Here's Raheem White with more.
For weeks now, local businesses have been forced to rely on generators due to the prolonged power outages. Despite minimal damage to the area, electricity is yet to be restored. This has left business owners frustrated and struggling to stay afloat mere weeks away from a new school term.
It's terrible. It's awful because, to operate a business without electricity, especially if you have a supermarket or so, or a restaurant, and you have to use standby generator, the cost of gas. It is unbearable. It's going into about the 3rd week now. And one of the things that why people are so upset is that we got minimal damage here, right? And up to this point, we don't get electricity.
One local business owner expressed deep concerns over the situation, adding the cost of fuel for the generators is eating into her profits.
Well, I really would have wanted the light, honestly. Or if you have to go turn to solar or whatever, because you can't afford it. But make a profit on me making a shop, you will light gone in a gas.
Adding to their frustration is the absence of a Member of Parliament to lobby on their behalf. With the resignation of MP Marissa Dalmurphy-Philibert several months now, business owners and residents alike feel neglected and are calling on the government to intervene in southern Trelawney.
We're calling on Mr. Holness to come at South Trelawney because it's August coming now is 1 year since we don't have any MP and we don't have no one come here to represent us. Every day Dr. Chan come and say he will keep in meeting and none not show up. Nobody is not showing up. And we need them to come and talk to us. We need someone to come and talk to us what's happening in Southern Trelawney. Because you go hear the PMP, them go out and talk about time come, and nobody not time. No time no come for we.
Raheem White, CVM News.
More news in a moment.
CVM News News at 7 headlines Tuesday, courtesy of Heart and STA Trust, Jamaica's Human Development Agency.
The new KFC Cheats a Zinger. Crispy, spicy chicken topped with marinara sauce, mozzarella cheese, and pepperoni in a brioche bun. Available for a limited time. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
We can't say we're a friend now, Celine. We have to take on the road.
Yeah, man, we have to take on the same way. All right, Lord, thank you so much for this day.
Me, I do the work. Yeah. And the people them accept it. Clarendon, Mandeville. But now we get to go into the inner city of Kingston.
I can't wait to learn more as we go across Jamaica into different churches to understand what they do.
CVM News at 7 Tuesday, brought to you by KFC.
The new KFC Cheats a Zinger. Available for a limited time. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Welcome back. Farmers in Heartland St. Catherine continue to plead with the management of the Sugar Company of Jamaica, SCJ Holdings Limited, to improve the communications, which will finally allow them to farm the leased lands, or farm the lands that they've leased. As Adrian Williams tells us, the farmers are calling on the Prime Minister to put the long-standing matter to rest.
Farmers from Heartland St. Catherine who have been leased lands by Sugar Company Holdings, SCJ Holdings Limited, remain unsettled, lamenting the lands are still not ready for them to farm them. With the land overrun with weeds and untilled soil, advocate and farmer Samuel King says the condition is disheartening.
You can see we cannot farm. The condition is atrocious. We are under operation, procrastination, delay and postpone. There is no access to the farm. There is no irrigation that can go on because there's no drains that has been cut out. There's no storm drain, nothing at all. SCJ have been giving us land lease and they are telling us to go and pay at the bank. But look at the farm.
But has anything been done by the SCJ to the lands in question?
This land has been cleared over a year now. To be exact, 1 year and 3 months this land has been cleared. And it is in the state that it is in because cows have even come and compacted the land. That has made it even worse, not worse, worse.
Other farmers have chimed in on King's sentiments.
Most of the land covered with water and there is no drain system put. And that's what them should do for a long time when the land a plow. I said to him, say, one drain supposed to go down, so they never hear me say, no, when the rain flood were there, we see the true color of the land. If me come here now and start plan, I waste of time if rain come.
We're ready for work the land, but SCJ not deal with it nice. We don't know why them not dealing with it nice. They cover up the whole of the drain. See the whole of the drain cover there? Yeah. So we're ready for work the land, but we can't work it because we don't have no notch in it. Them not give it, they not line up anything give it. We make we work it. Them going to tell you so if you come pay the money, come pay money, and at the same time the land already.
King says he has been calling on the minister, Floyd Green, for some time now. Currently, he's appealing to the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness.
Mr. Prime Minister, Honorable Mr. Prime Minister, please, we are begging a visit. We have been calling for Floyd Green for so long now, over 4 years. So we are begging you, please, Mr. Prime Minister, visit here in Heartland. If you're really serious about farming and food preservation and all of that, visit us, Mr. Prime Minister.
Efforts to reach the SCJ were unsuccessful. Adrian Williams for CVM News.
And over in Trelawney now, the farmers there are demanding electricity as weeks without power is cutting into their earnings. Their pleas follow growing concerns within the agriculture sector which has been tremendously affected by the Category 4 hurricane. We go back to Adrian Williams for that report.
Trelawney forms part of the cockpit country and is known for its yam production. However, for farmers in southern Trelawney, Hurricane Beryl attempted to reap all they had sown. Among their growing pain is the prevailing loss of electricity critical to production.
Set we back a whole lot since the hurricane, because we can't do what we have to do, the ground damage. No money to fix it up because the money we have to take it by gas to the chicken them, to keep them going.
Graham says locals are hesitant to purchase chicken as they have no means of storage without it going to waste. Champion B-class farmer Cecil Robe says his production has been cut tremendously.
If you're looking at my truck, papayas, bananas, they will deliver some goods now.
Right.
And the production cut.
Right.
I used to be doing £1,000, I'm down to about 300 now.
Shop owners and other farmers in the area all share similar views, adding no one from government has come to check on them.
Nobody no come and look for me yet. I'm like with the back of the world. Somebody look like up at Trelawney. So we don't have nobody take care of it.
Yes, we don't have no MP for the longest while still, but you don't know at the end of the day you can't bow down and really die. You have to just the stuff, you understand?
Yeah, man, so help us.
You invest all of your time and your effort and your money in the ground.
Yeah, man.
And 1 minute, 1 day, and you have to start over from scratch.
For some, they are facing the reality and accepting the losses.
Other things happen. See, we do without electricity for much weeks now. So we want to complain, kind of look fool. You understand me? But God knows.
According to the Jamaica Public Service, Trelawney is on the work schedule for the next few days, urging the people to be patient just a while longer. Adrian Williams for CVM News.
And we'll continue here with CVM News at 7 with our business segment right after this.
Jamaica's favorite drama, Your Guilty Pleasure.
Listen to me, is it, Reverend Madden? I don't want you to gamble with my life or the lives of our children.
Royal Palm Estate is on CVM every Tuesday and Sunday at 9 p.m.
Hey everyone, it's attorney Sekou Clark. Catch me on the next episode of Cooking with Love on CVM TV.
Cook with love, so we do it.
We have gotten 7-figure recoveries for immigrants who are undocumented.
7 figures.
7 figures. So many people have asked me, the bond hearing is separate from the removal proceedings, but to be released.
Wow. Man, a big chef in there, so I go on there so right now.
Big up Cooking with Love.
Good evening and welcome to the Business Report. I'm Andrew Laidley. A cloud of pessimism is hovering over the nation as both businesses and consumers feel that economic conditions will worsen. Now, Chairman and CEO of Market Research Services, Don Anderson, revealed the sentiments of Jamaicans coming from the recently concluded Business and Consumer Confidence Survey for the second quarter of 2024. Between April and January, about 660 Jamaicans were quizzed on how they are faring financially and their outlook for the future. The verdict from the national representative sample is now in, and the common thread is that both businesses and consumers feel economic conditions have tightened and will remain strained for a while.
We've seen, of course, a very jagged pattern, and when we look at business and consumer confidence surveys across the world, this pattern is very much the same, as it fluctuates based on all kinds of factors.
Compared to the first quarter, consumer confidence is down 3% and business confidence shrunk by 4.8%. As Anderson explains, joblessness is a common denominator.
High unemployment and low disposable income. So they are also saying what the consumers are saying. Consumers are saying, boy, we don't have enough jobs aren't plentiful, and therefore if we don't have money, we can't buy goods. People are saying, well, the high unemployment is causing us, making it challenging for us. So these are the critical factors why that 19%, 1 in every 5 of the businesses say that the economy will worsen in the next 12 months. So they're citing key factors there.
As at October 2023, Jamaica recorded a historic low unemployment rate of 4.2%. But the data has confirmed that ordinary Jamaicans are simply not experiencing the benefits of that.
Consumers felt, current economic conditions, meaning at the macro level, were, pretty decent, all right? But consumers think in terms of what's important to their pocket. So whilst they look at, as we will show later on, the macro picture for them looks pretty good, but in terms of their own situation, they're concerned about it. People said, yeah, things are okay now, but when we look forward, we're not as optimistic about the situation going forward, and therefore we have a challenge in business conditions.
Gail Moss Solomon, General Counsel and Chief Corporate Secretary at Grace Kennedy Limited, shared her thoughts.
It's a little bit surprising because we have a relatively low unemployment rate at this time. But I think the